Hello, good morning, and welcome. Today I'll be giving a very short presentation on this particular topic. You see it? Listening. Now before I get into it, let me just explain something. I want to tell you how I decided on this topic. The thing is that recently I've been doing some research. I've been going on the internet and trying to find out which training topics are most in demand by companies for training their staff and especially for their management. And there were a number of, I was creating a mental list in my head of all the topics that keep coming up, and I was thinking that I'll definitely be doing my presentation on one of these topics. So this particular topic that I've chosen, listening, came up repeatedly. And what made me finally decide on this was the funny thought I had in my head when I when I looked at this topic, the name of the topic, and when I reflected a little, I realized that this is something that young people generally are not too familiar with. But older, more experienced people are. Like, take for example, I'm 30 years old, right? And I can think of not a single instance in my whole life where I've had a conversation or a discussion or anything about listening and the importance of listening with anyone my age. Friends, relatives, colleagues, doesn't matter. I've never talked about this. With older people, I've still had the occasional discussion. So, which means that more experienced people above a certain age, are familiar with what listening is and why it's important to be a good listener. Typically, to my knowledge, that's because they usually come across it in training programs at work, and it also happens frequently that in their personal life, someone usually gives them the feedback that you don't listen enough. You should listen more. So that's why older people are more familiar. So, but either way, the situation is still surprising because I realized that, you pick up any book on how to be successful and you'll definitely find this to be one of the major pointers. Listen more, bring down your ego, stop focusing on your own self-centered thoughts and pay attention to other people. But despite the widespread knowledge out there about how important listening is, young people still don't know enough about it, and old people, even though they do know, they still aren't able to become effective listeners. So that's what made me finally decide that it's an interesting topic which should be covered. Right. So I told you a little bit about why I'm covering this topic and how I decided what to cover. So in fact, here I'm just going to tell you what I'm about to cover. I'll be covering these two things. I had to, when I came to this bit, I really had to choose. I really had to struggle to decide what I should include and what I should leave out. I finally decided that this is not a training program. It's a very short presentation, a short introduction to the topic, which means that I will not be giving pointers on how to be a good listener. Instead, I'll be bringing up data which many of you might already be familiar with, which will emphasize why listening is such a crucial skill to have for everyone. And also then we'll be talking about some of the barriers to listening. Now what this means is that I will not be telling you how to become a good listener. I'll be telling you what is stopping you from becoming a good listener. I hope everyone understands the difference there. It's a very subtle difference, but it's important. It's like saying that say you're going to take part in a race, right? And you decide that you're going to start practicing, and you go to the racetrack. Before you start actually doing your run, before you start running and practicing, you have to remove any obstacles from the racetrack, like rocks and so on and so forth. This is similar to that. That's what we'll be discussing, and that will be the most important part of my presentation. And then before we end, we'll be taking a short quiz where I'll be, which you'll find interesting again, because one thing that I read over the course of my research was that people think they're better listeners than they actually are. They think of themselves as good listeners or okay listeners when everyone's actually a very poor listener. This quiz will make you realize that. And hopefully once you've realized that, your takeaways by the end of this presentation will be that you're not really a very good listener, or at least not as good as you think you are. And that is bad, because it's going to have a direct and a considerable impact on where you end up in your life. And once you're done, hopefully you'll be able to begin the journey to taking steps to becoming a better listener. So hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.